What if I told you that the real estate decisions you make today could save you tens of thousands of dollars by 2025? The real estate landscape is about to change dramatically and time is running out. If you're planning to buy or sell soon, these imminent shifts in interest rates, pricing, and inventory could dramatically affect your deal. What you don't know about 2025 could cost you dearly. Don't miss out. Let's dive in now. I'm Kiel Lindsey, your property geek. I love spreadsheets, superhero movies, and combining technology with my proven processes to help busy homeowners sell their house for as much as possible with the least amount of hassle. If this is your first time here, welcome. Please hit that subscribe button. I have a lot of really cool videos coming up soon, and I would hate for you to miss them. As we dive into the forecast for 2025, I'm going to break this into three parts because they relate to each other and they influence each other. So we're going to start with interest rates. We know that throughout the last 18 months, 2 years, interest rates have been the driving force in real estate. Two is inventory. As interest rates have affected buyer activity, inventory levels have reacted appropriately. And so the interest rate affects buyer activity, which affects inventory levels. And inventory levels have a direct effect on pricing. So as you'll see, we walk through this and I start making some predictions using some data here for 2025. These will affect each other in order. Now, what I want to start off with was interest rates. And I'm going to kick it off with a quote from Greg McBride here, Chief Financial Analyst for Bankrate. And he says that the Fed interest rate cuts in general will bring about lower mortgage rates, which is a definite boost to the housing market, but it won't happen overnight. We know this to be true. The Fed interest rate cuts do not directly affect mortgage interest rates. They're correlated, but they're not exactly directly affecting it because interest rates are determined by mortgage-backed securities or mortgage bonds, basically. Now, they're correlated because the cheaper the Fed makes money for banks to borrow and buy from the Fed, the cheaper the bonds should be. They affect the investor market. Now, that's a real oversimplification. So anyone who is an expert in mortgage bonds and how this works, please don't blow me up in the comments, but that's generally how it works. So as the Fed cuts interest rates, we hope that in a couple weeks, maybe a month or two, we will see the mortgage interest rates follow suit and actually start getting cheaper as well. In fact, I have this chart here showing some predictions. Now, Fannie Mae and MBA here, we're making these predictions as of August, and I've highlighted Wells Fargo because they made their prediction in September. So it's the most recent, reflecting the Fed rate cuts. So looking at this, we can see that Wells Fargo is obviously the lowest, but every single one of these is showing a reduction in interest rates. So even if the only thing that they all got correct is they're going down, hopefully that's good news. So when I look at the average of all three, I think it would be fantastic if even by the end of next year, we are in the high to mid fives. I hope that Wells Fargo is correct and we get even toward the mid fives, even closer. However, interest rates are extremely hard to predict. Even going back to the beginning of 2024, people were predicting that by the end of 2024, we would already be in the mid fives, and obviously that hasn't happened. However, I am hoping, fingers crossed, because I don't have a crystal ball, but I really am hoping that we see this trend start. Now, I think that we're already closer to this prediction. Looking at current interest rates, you can go to mortgagenewsdaily.com if you'd like to check them out yourself. But looking at this, I think Fannie Mae and Wells Fargo are probably more accurate. That would be my agreement from what I've seen. Now, I'm not an expert in this. I'm not an economist. I'm not even a lender. So I'm just a lowly real estate agent that loves to help people buy homes, but I have to get really involved in this as I'm helping people calculate their affordability. And that's really what this is all about, is affordability. Because the lower the interest rate, the more affordable your payment is. And that's what's really been tripping people up lately. Yes, prices have gotten higher, but honestly, as buyers, you want the prices to get higher. You don't want to buy a house and have it crash. Everyone likes to joke about, or maybe they're not joking, but about, oh, I'm going to wait for the housing market to crash. Why would you want that? That's going to cause a lot more instability in the housing market. So I don't want it to crash, but I would love the values to start going up at a more even pace. And with interest rates going lower, that makes things much more affordable. Now, we're going to get into pricing here in a minute at the end of the video. I have one more chart here to show you that shows the rise and fall of interest rates over the last couple of years. And you can see that during the pandemic, they dipped way low, artificially low. These rates will probably not happen again for a very long time, if ever. Then we had this spike in interest rates with the Fed raising the rates, and now they're starting to come back down. Hopefully by the end of 2025 and even into 2026, we can see these continue to go down. Now, the reason that interest rates have such a direct effect on inventory, because if buyers are not going into the market and buying homes, but sellers are still trying to sell, what happens? People put their houses up for sale, but no one buys them. So the number of homes for market continue to go up. Now we're going to get into the exact numbers on inventory here, but that's the general way that this happens. And so here's a quote from Sam Cater, chief economist of Freddie Mac. He says, "A recent moderation in home price growth and increases in housing inventory are a welcoming sign for potential home buyers." Now, this is true because the more homes for sale, buyers have more choice. And if interest rates start becoming lower, even better. Now they have more choice and more affordability. This is good news for you as a home buyer. In fact, a lot of people are starting to recognize this, and home mortgage originations are up. So this chart behind me is showing the number of home mortgage originations by year and quarter. So in 2023 is the lowest year, and then this year it ticked up a little bit, even with the higher interest rates. And then this Q4 is a little bit more of a prediction number here. And then 2025 are the projections for next year. And you can see they're significantly higher than the last 2 years. So what does this mean? This means that more buyers are about to enter the market. Now, inventory is up across the nation. Here in Texas, it is even up even more than most. And in DFW, we'll get those numbers here in a second. However, if more buyers enter the market, what does that do for competition as a buyer? If you have more competition, those most desirable homes are going to go even quicker. And I'll show you the number of inventory here in a second, but be aware that now, if you were looking to buy a home right now in the fall of 2024, could be when I've been talking about that closing window, and this could be it. That window is cracked right now and is about to slam shut. I truly believe that as these interest rates drop, more buyers will enter the market, especially as we get into 2025, and you will have less choice and more competition as a buyer, meaning you're going to get a worse deal on a house that may not have been your ideal choice. If you were thinking about buying a house in the next 6 to 12 months, I would love to talk to you, because now may be the perfect time for you. It may not be, and that's okay. But if it is, and the only thing holding you back is a fear of interest rates or of what's available and things like that, let's talk through that, because there are strategies to get you a great deal and an even better interest rate than even what's available today. Home sellers, now is not the best time to sell your house. Now, as a real estate agent, I'm not supposed to say that. I'm supposed to say it's always a good time to sell your house. Now is not the best time, especially as we go into fall of 2024. So if you can hold off, I might suggest that. Now, there's always people that really can't hold off or just don't want to, and that's fine. I help home sellers all the time get their home sold quickly and for the most amount of money by positioning your home correctly. When there's more competition on the market, do you think it would take more or less skill to get that home sold quickly and position it as the go-to house for most buyers? It will definitely going to take more skill. So if you were thinking about selling your house this fall, please reach out to me. I would love to go over our strategies and get you a custom step-by-step process to get your house sold as quickly as possible. As we move into the inventory section of this, what I really want you to understand is when we say inventory, it's really just a fancy industry term for saying the number of homes currently for sale in the market. Now, this includes new construction, resale homes, townhomes, everything. That's what we're going to be looking at across North Texas. And as we look at this number, there's really two factors here that I'm not going to talk about the second factor as much. If you'd like to really hear me talk more about that, you can check out my latest market update video. The link to the playlist will be in the description below. But the second number is the rate of sale. How many closings are we getting per month versus how many new listings are we getting? That change in inventory per month is what we like to call months of supply. So as we move and we start talking about number of homes for sale, is that growing or is that decreasing? Because the trend is important here. I could say that we have 40,000 homes for sale, but if we're selling 45,000 homes in a month, that's not very many. But if we have 40,000 homes for sale and we're selling 1,000 a month, that's a lot. So knowing that the rate of sale and the months of supply is really important. And I have a quote here from Mark Fleming, chief economist of First American, and he says the faster housing supply increases, the more affordability improves and the strength of a seller's market wanes. Let's think through that for a second. So if the housing supply is increasing incredibly quickly, so the faster it increases, what he's saying, how does that affect affordability? Why would that improve? So here's how you can think about this. Let's say you and 5 other people are all standing in front of a house and you all want to buy that one house. What's going to happen? Some guy walks out, some auctioneer, and he starts rattling off prices and people are waving and overbidding and going nuts. Now let's think if each of those people, there's 5 houses now and 5 people, what's going to happen to the price of each home? You're not going to pay as much because there's more choice. What if there was 50 homes and 5 people? 500 homes. The more homes that are available and the number of the buyers stays relatively similar, the more choice they have. The more choice they have, the more competitive the sellers need to be to attract them to their house. Just like when a store is having trouble selling things, what do? They run it on sale, 20% off, 50% off, buy one, get one. So the more inventory and the faster that inventory is changing as far as increasing inventory, the better deals buyers will be able to get. Now, remember me talking about months of supply just a second ago? Months of supply is a useful tool to help gauge whether we're in a seller's or a buyer's market. Now, standard 5 to 7 months is considered a balanced market. Anything below that technically is a seller's market. Anything above that is technically a buyer's market. However, once again, the number that is left off here is the trend. Is it going up or down? Because for the last year, we've been in a seller's market. And while if you position your home correctly and you come on the market at the right price and the right condition, you can sell very quickly. If you miss that mark, we have homes sitting on the market right now for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months that have been on the market for a year because they overpriced their listing for the wrong condition and now they're just sitting. So the trend here is very important. Is it trending towards a buyer's market or is it trending towards a seller's market? That will affect how it feels to the buyer and the seller. Right now in DFW, we are sitting right about 4.6 months of inventory. Now, normally that will peak right around this time and then start to dip as we go into next year because less people put their homes up for sale during the fall. So as less homes come on the market and we still have people buying those homes that are available, inventory should start to decrease. Now, the more rapidly it decreases on the flip side, so if it increases rapidly, that's better for buyers. If it decreases rapidly, that's better for sellers. So if we start seeing a more rapid decrease as interest rates go down and buyers enter the market again, so now we're starting to combine the interest rate stuff I was talking about with the inventory stuff. So think about this. If the months of supply is going down, meaning inventory is going down, and we have more buyers entering the market, guess what happens? We have less supply. Less supply and more buyers, supply and demand, prices will respond. Now we're about to get into the pricing talk, but you see where I'm going with this and why these are so interconnected? Interest rates affect buyer activity and affordability. Buyer activity affects levels of inventory. Levels of inventory, supply and demand, buyer demand, supply, affect the price. So let's move into the pricing talk. So last thing I want to show you here for levels of supply. This is what we're looking at across DFW right now as far as number of homes for sale. This is a stacked chart, meaning the top here is the total number. Blue is new construction, green is resale. And this white line is the trend, the average, and it's a trailing 6 months average. As we can see, it follows the peaks pretty steadily, and we are trending up right now. Now, I do believe, as you can see, these peaks normally trail off in the fall. That's what I'm talking about, this peak. We're about at the top of this peak. It'll trail off through the winter and into the spring a little bit, and it'll start coming back up. And this is the trend that I was just talking about. So as we move into talking about pricing, pricing is directly affected by the buyer demand and the levels of inventory that I was just talking about. Now, here's what the experts are predicting. As you can go through, there's a lot of big institutions here with a lot of probably overpaid economists trying to predict all this stuff. And Wells Fargo, again, very optimistic, but I don't always trust banks as far as making their predictions here. NAR, the National Association of Realtors, is actually a little bit more conservative here. So is Freddie Mac. But as you can see here, every single one of these is positive. Now, if we take the average here, a 2.6%, that is a pretty modest amount of growth, but that's positive growth. Why is that good? For home sellers, obviously you want your home because you're a homeowner to go up in value. Buyers, you do not want to crash. I said it earlier, I'm going to say it again. Who wants to buy something and have the price go way down like that? No one does. Now, maybe someone else can get a good deal, but no one wants to be left holding the bag. In fact, the only time we've seen dramatic pricing cuts like that really has been during the housing crash of 07-08. And I've done several other videos of why that is not going to happen again. You can go back and find those on my channel if you like. However, what we're looking at right now is modest price growth predicted over the next couple of years. This is just for 2025 at the moment. However, this is being predicted out for the next several years. I will say that what they're not really taking into account, they're trying to be more conservative here. What they're not taking into account is what's going to happen if the interest rates drop significantly. Let's say, if you go back to that slide I showed at Wells Fargo, where they were at 5.5%, if that were to happen, or if it even got even lower for some reason, I think these could be much higher because the buyers will flood the market back again. There's a lot of pent-up demand. Buyers could flood the market, and in certain local markets, maybe not across the entire country, but certain local markets where buyer demand is the highest, we could see price appreciation double, maybe even triple what we're seeing in this chart here. So let's take a look at the local numbers here. That was national price appreciation numbers. Locally, what are we looking at here? So what I have here is a chart of the last 5 years, and this is what's been happening across DFW. Now, I only have the 4 major counties of DFW here. It's about 80% of all sales, so it should be pretty accurate. And as normal, if you've been, again, following the channel for a while, you know that Dallas and Tarrant County are actually some of the lower priced counties in DFW. Down here, the blue and the red. Now, Tarrant County is up. It's actually one of the only counties that's up year over year. So it's up 0.6%. Dallas County and Collin County have actually fallen year over year, about 2.7 for Dallas, 4.2 for Collin. And Denton County's flat. Now you can see it, that's compared to 12 months back, because you can see obviously it hasn't stayed static. It's up and it's down. The peaks in 2022 that you're seeing here were because interest rates were low. That's when they were in the 3s. And the prices shot up because so many buyers had so much affordability that they flooded the market. Supply went way down. Demand was very high. What happens to prices? They go up. So prices went way up, and then the Fed slammed on the brakes, raising interest rates. And as interest rates went down, houses became less affordable. So demand went down. And that's when we start, if we go back to see that supply graph, that's what started going up. So prices took a dip. Now, they dipped from the high, and then they started coming back up, and they started going back into their more cyclical cycle. Now, prices across the market do rise and fall on average. Now, the trick here is this doesn't necessarily mean your house, the home's value is going up and down. This is just a record of what has actually sold. And correlation, again, is not always causation, meaning just because we see a dip in prices in November, December, January, February, and March doesn't necessarily mean that prices are going down. It just means that less expensive homes are being sold. Think about that. Let that rattle around for a second. Less expensive homes are being sold. So people with the $1 million homes, $10 million homes, the ones that really bring this average up, and just in the bigger chunk, the 500 to 800 range, they typically sell during the summers. They typically are families. They have children. They don't want to disrupt the school year. So most of your sales happen over the summer. That's what we see typically every single year in DFW, is this very cyclical pattern here. If this continues, we should hopefully see this continue to go up. That's what's being predicted. If this is going to start being cyclical up and continue waving up and down, or up the graph here. So that's what we're looking at here in DFWs right now. Mid 3s in Tarrant and Dallas County. If you have a little fancier taste, want to go to Collin, Denton County, you're looking at close to $500,000 median price. Thank you for sticking with me this long. Hopefully, as you've gone through this video, you've seen how interest rates will drive buyer activity, which drives the level of inventory, so the number of homes for sale, which drives the price, and how all three of these things are so interconnected. Going into 2025, you've seen that interest rates are predicted to go down, which should give buyer activity a boost. And as buyer activity gets a boost, we should hopefully see the level of inventory go down slightly. Now, there are conditions where this could get a little bit more out of control, but what I think is truly going to happen is as buyer activity increases, seller activity will increase too, and we're already at a pretty good level of inventory. I would like to see the market stay somewhere between 4 and 5 months of supply. Maybe a little bit lower than 4, but nothing too close to 5 or over 5. I think close to a neutral market is about perfect. Because as a seller, who wants their house list in the market for 6 to 9 months? No one. But as a buyer, you love to see it. You want to get that deal. I think somewhere in that 4 to 5 month range is about perfect, in my opinion, of course, so that buyers have a lot of choice and they can still get a great deal. And sellers can't just put a turd on the market and hope to get top dollar for it like they were in 2021 and 22. I really believe that in 2025, we're going to see a market that is a little bit more like we're used to pre-pandemic. I think that buyers will have choice. The homes will be a little bit more affordable because interest rates will come down. And hopefully we'll see people being able to make a decision to buy a house simply because of their situation, not necessarily the affordability of the market being so bad. There's a lot of people that have been sitting on the market just because they just literally can't afford it. And I get it. I've talked to a lot of those people, helped some of them actually achieve what they didn't think was possible, but there's a lot of people that I get it. They just literally can't afford buying a house with today's interest rates. As that gets better, I really do hope to see buyers next year come into the market and get that house they've been waiting for, whether it's new construction or resale home. I want to see that happen. And sellers, if you have been waiting to sell your house, one, because you need to buy another one, but two, because you've been uncertain of the market, I would love to do a quick consultation with you and show you how my unique sales approach can actually help you get top dollar for your house and be the obvious choice for buyers in your neighborhood. Thanks, guys. If you haven't already, please like this video. I put a lot of time and effort into it, and if you got some value in it, I would really appreciate that thumbs up. And thank you. If you haven't already, check out some of the videos on my channel. I've been doing a lot of property tours and market updates, so I would love to have you stick around and check out what else I have. Thanks, and have a great day.